Hey, Basel YouTube, 6fthax here. Have for you guys today one hellacious UBERS battle, guys. Holy crap, this game was absolutely insane, man. Like, this game compared to the previous battle I uploaded against Argon, like, those two battles are not in the same category at all. This game was really good and definitely came down to the wire. So if you guys do enjoy this insanely long and intense battle, make sure to hammer that like button down below. Sit back, grab some popcorn, and relax because we got one hell of a game to get through for today's upload. So this is a really awesome team that I got off of Harris's Discord that was based around Marshadow and Mega Lopunny. I liked it because Marshadow in general and then Mega Lopunny and UBERS sounds really awesome. And of course, Argon does have his own Marshadow, so depending on how we play those Marshadows, it may come down between the two of them to determine this game. But going into this matchup, Landers I was definitely a problem. A potential SD Arceus could be a very scary thing late game, and then if he plays his Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre well enough, the combination of those two could really be a bit of a nuisance for my team. So I end up leading off with my Lopunny because turn one I want to go ahead and Mega Evolve and get off my Mega Evolution and chip off whatever he wants to lead off with, as he ends up leading off with the Lando I. First off, I didn't think that this thing was going to be scarfed. Second off, I thought I was just going to outspeed him and knock him out with the Ice Punch, so I do just end up making that safe play in the Ice Punch. Very happy he didn't decide to switch into his Kyogre here because obviously that would have taken 0 from my Ice Punch, but the Lugia was the safer middle ground play in this scenario just because I can literally do nothing to Lugia, so not wanting to take a Toxic or a potential Psychic or Aura Blast or something along those lines, I'm going to switch directly into my Groudon. I mainly expected him to want to go for the Toxic, and honestly in hindsight, switching directly into Groudon was a bit of a misplay on my part. What I should have done was probably brought in my Ho-Oh instead because I do have Toxic on Ho-Oh, so even if he was able to Toxic me, I could have then potentially Toxic him or Toxic whatever he wanted to bring in, and Ho-Oh probably would have baited him to bring in his Kyogre, and then that way I could have doubled out into my Groudon, and then that would have put me in a better scenario, and then that's when I could have got up Stealth Rocks instead of switching directly into my Groudon here, allowing it to get Toxic. Honestly, the Toxic on Groudon is not that big of an issue, but it is going to be just a little bit annoying because obviously my Landorus is, not my Landorus, but my Groudon is on a timer as he brings in his Landorus, and this is a little bit annoying because I don't really have too many Pokemon that can safely switch into those Landorus, and if he does have a Rock type move, and that could be very bad, I don't know why I mixed up those letters, because it'll knock out my Ho. So I do try to make the safe switch into Ho, as Argon makes a very good prediction and goes for the Stone Edge, absolutely destroying my Ho-Oh, and this has just become very bad. The good thing about this is, though, I get a free switch into my Marshadow, and he has no switch-ins to Marshadow. Another good thing is, with his Landorus being physically offensive as opposed to especially defensive, my Arceus Water is now my best answer to that Landorus. Not to mention, Arceus Water is also the only thing on my team stopping that Landorus from just coming in and clicking Earthquake and claiming a soul every time. So really have to be careful with that thing because the combination of Landorus and Precipice Blade from Groudon could be a little bit overwhelming if I misplay around them. So judging for how much damage this Spectral Thief did to the Kyogre, I should definitely be able to knock him out with the close combat here because I didn't want to risk popping my Z move this early on in the battle if I didn't have to. So thankfully, close combat does knock him out, as it reveals to be Arceus Water as well. So this is actually kind of good because I don't have to worry about a potential SD Arceus. The only issue is, though, that if this is a physically defensive Arceus Water like most of them are, then this thing is going to be a giant nuisance for me to take down unless I'm able to get off a Toxic on it and put it on a timer. So he does just end up going for the safe default here, which is perfectly fine by me, expecting him to try and switch into either the Groudon or into the Landorus this turn. What I'm going to do is actually go ahead and pull a double switch out because there's no move I have on this Magearna that can do entirely too much damage to the Groudon on the switch in, so he would have just got a free switch in here if I wanted to stay in and go for Floral Cannon. Plus, there was no reason for him to leave in the Arceus here on the off chance that I did have the Toxic, so him switching into Groudon here was by far his best play to make, or Landorus could have been a good play as well. Either way, both of those two mons are covered by my Arceus, and if he did have Will-O-Wisp on Arceus, he might have been able to burn my Magearna, and then that means my Arceus would have been burned instead of it potentially being toxic later in this match by his own Arceus or by the Lugia. So I am going to be able to get off the toxic here on his switch into his own Arceus water, and this is really great because now I'm able to put that Arceus on a timer, which means it's going to be a lot easier for me to deal with. As this turn, I'm going to go ahead and switch out because I don't want to take a toxic, and I'm going to try and get on my Stealth Rocks again so I can maybe start applying pressure and prevent him from just freely defogging them away with his Arceus. But he makes a solid switch out here into the Landers, probably expecting me to bring in my Magearna, and while I could maybe live one Earthquake just because Groudon is extremely bulky, I do not want to risk that because I still have use for my Groudon later in this match to potentially toxic his Lugia or try and get on my Stealth Rocks and again try and keep up offensive pressure so that he can't defog them away. And my best switch in to this Landers is definitely my Arceus because he's got no move that can ride out to a KO or even come close to 3 KOing me from his Landorus to my Arceus. So I'm going to take this chance to go for the Toxic, thinking that he would either try and switch into the Groudon, expecting me to go for a Water type Judgment or Nice Beam, or potentially trying to bring in the Lugia. That way he could then Toxic me from there. So Toxicking whatever came in was by far going to be my best play to do in this scenario, as I'm going to try and Ice Beam here. Very confident that he himself does not have Toxic on Groudon because Primal Groudon don't typically carry Toxic. They carry Precipice Blade, Lava Plume, Fire Punch, Rocks, and then like Rock Tomb, Dragon Tail, Roar, something along those lines. So Toxic on Primal Groudon, from what I've seen, is very rare. So very confident that he had nothing to really damage my Arceus with here. So I will be able to safely go for the recover. I need to keep this Arceus at as much HP as possible so I can still safely switch it in against the Landorus to chew those Earthquakes, and I can definitely take any hit from the Groudon and then outspeed it and recover, or potentially knock it out if it's going to be low enough after the Toxic. So here I do switch back into my Magearna, thinking that he would try and Toxic my Arceus because much like his Arceus is a giant problem to my team, my Arceus is a giant problem to his team, so he definitely wants to try and get off that Toxic on me. And this turn, I do expect them to try and make the safe switch back into the Groudon, and I really have no drawback by going for the Floral Cannon, you know, unless I miss, and that actually kind of sucks because I would have got off a solid like 15-ish% on this Groudon and put him at about 50% HP. So I'm going to switch directly on back out into my Arceus here because I'm expecting him to either want to go for the Precipice Blade, switch out, or as you can see, get up his Stealth Rocks, which if he does want to get up Rocks and stay in, that's perfectly fine by me because he's going to start taking that chip damage from the poison every time, and that's going to make it a lot easier for me to play around this Groudon in general. So I am just going to go ahead and go for the defog here. I did kind of expect him to switch directly into his own Arceus, not this Lugia though, and I kind of wish I had Toxic here because I would have been able to Toxic this Lugia, because honestly with me losing my Ho-Oh, Rocks up on my side of the field aren't as detrimental to me as they are on his side of the field, so I might have been able to forego the defog in this scenario and then gone for the Toxic instead of defogging here. Either way though, it's not entirely too big of an issue, as I'm going to switch out expecting him to 100% go for the Toxic to try and poison my Arceus, and I'm then going to go for the Volt Switch because I didn't expect them to switch right back in to the Groudon because it's starting to get worn down, but it turns out that I actually outspeed him because he went for the Whirlwind, and because I don't want my Groudon to take any more unnecessary damage, what I'm going to do is switch that in on the Whirlwind. This way I can avoid it potentially being forced in and taking an extra turn of toxic damage. So I thought that was a pretty smart play on my part, as he Whirlwinds me into my Arceus if I'm not mistaken. This is going to be a little bit of a nuisance because now I definitely have to go for the Toxic. I did kind of expect him to not go for his own Toxic because I thought that he might have expected me to switch into my Magearna, and I guess in hindsight I definitely could have done that, but the problem with that is that this Lugia would have just been able to stay in here until eventually I did Toxic it with something, and probably my Groudon would have been the better thing for me to Toxic this with, because now he's able to Toxic my Arceus Water, and this is honestly not entirely too bad because as long as I stay at about 60-ish% HP, there's no way that Landorus 2 KOs me with Earthquakes and I can safely recover off the damage or knock him out with the Ice Beam, and I can still safely switch in to the Groudon. So I felt pretty comfortable right here just going for the Ice Beam if he did for some reason just want to leave in the Lugia and try to maybe stall me out a little bit. But I mean, his toxic damage also would have started to rack up on him. As this turn, I'm going to switch out into my Magearna, expecting him to just want to go for the recover and me not wanting to have the toxic turns rack up too much against me. Could have probably actually stayed in and gone for at least one recover now that I think about it, but I mean, Arceus is still at a pretty solid amount of HP, so I'm not entirely too concerned. As this turn, I am just going to go for the Floral Cannon once more. Depending on whatever play he wants to make, this is going to be doing a decent amount of damage to whatever comes in. If he switches into the Lugia, it's going to take this damage plus toxic damage, and if he brings in the Groudon, as you see here, it's still going to take the floral damage plus the toxic damage as well. And if he did want to leave in the Arceus Water, then that just means the toxic damage would have started racking up even more on him. And this is where me missing earlier, it kind of sucks because I would have put him in range I would have most likely put him in range of where this next turn of Toxic was actually going to knock him out, but it's not entirely game changing, although at the time it was a little bit annoying. But hey, that's Pokemon and I got bad luck, so it is what it is. And of course he's hitting every single Precipice Blade, but I mean, it's fine, as he is able to just barely live. Man, that's literally how much damage Floral Cannon did right there. It's fine though, I will be able to get off the recover here, and I'm guessing that miss was actually just a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because obviously my Arceus here would have been at about like 10 or 15% HP as opposed to the 55% that I'm at right now. So he does end up getting up his rocks here, as he's going to go down for the Toxic. As I mentioned earlier, rocks up on my side of the field aren't entirely too big of an issue. Like, me getting up rocks on his side of the field would be a lot more dangerous to him than it is to have rocks up on my side of the field right now. So I honestly thought right here that he was going to try and go for the Earthquake, expecting me to go for the Defog. So I decided to be aggressive and go for the Ice Beam, because if I'm able to get rid of his Landorus, that gets rid of his biggest threat to my team. But he does end up making the smart play and going for the U-turn on now into his Arceus, and this is actually really bad because now my Arceus is really low to the point where I can probably not take another Earthquake from Landorus after Stealth Rocks, and that's really bad because Landorus is Scarf. It outspeeds my entire team and could potentially win late game, so I have to find some way to not let that Landorus just come in and click Earthquake to win. So I'm going to switch out here into my Groudon in hopes that if I'm able to get up my Stealth Rocks, then I can force him to deflog them away. As much as I would love to have rocks up on his side of the field as well, I need his Stealth Rocks gone from my side of the field in order for my Arceus to guarantee live one more Earthquake from Jolly Scarf Landorus. If he's Adamant Scarf, I'm going to get knocked out by Earthquake anyways, but there's really no reason to run Adamant in my opinion, so very positive he is a plus speed natured Scarf Landorus. So I do try and get up my Stealth Rocks here as he switches into the Lugia on my Precipice Blade. In hindsight, definitely should have gone for the Lava Plume, like my gut was telling me to go for Lava Plume, but it's not entirely that big of an issue, as I'm going to speed this little portion up because it's literally him just staying in here and Toxic stalling out my Groudon. At this point, I don't really have use for Groudon unless I wanted to save it later for Death Water potentially, which I mean, I guess I could have, and then I could have maybe brought in my Magearna, but I guess Magearna does invite him to just freely bring in the Lander, so that might have been a little bit bad as well. Either way though, as long as I can get off as much damage as possible on this Lugia, it's going to be really good for me, because once my Groudon goes down, I get a free switch back into my Marshadow. And much like earlier at the beginning of this game, like 30 turns ago, he's got no save switch-ins to Marshadow, and if for some reason he does want to save this Toxic Lugia, then that's perfectly fine by me, because with Lugia being Toxic and Arceus Water being Toxic, my Magearna in theory should be able to stall them out and eventually beat them 1v1. So I do get a free switch into my Marshadow here. I'm going to go straight for the Spectral Thief. Unfortunately, because Lugia is so stupidly bulky, man, it's going to just chew the hit like it's nothing, as he's going to go for the Toxic, knowing that he could be able to live any one hit. And if he did want to try and go for the Roost, Toxic would have put him in range of where Spectral Thief definitely would have knocked him out the following turn. So him going for Toxic there, or the Ice Beam if he had it, was definitely his best play. And this is where me not going for Lava Plume kind of does suck on the initial switch into Lugia, because it would have gone down this turn to the Toxic, and then that means I could have avoided an extra turn of Toxic on my Marshadow, but it's not entirely game changing in the slightest. It is a little annoying, but hey, is what it is. So down goes the Lugia, in comes the Arceus. Unfortunately, there is no way I straight Oko this Arceus. Like, I have to go for my Z move here and hope to get a crit, but because I'm very positive that he is going to go for the defog, if I don't crit him, that's actually going to be really good for me, because this means that my Arceus will be out of range of where the Earthquake from Landers will knock me out. If I had crit him and I had knocked him out here, then his Landers would have been in range of where the combination of Shadow Sneak from Marshadow and Fake Out from my Lopunny would have most likely taken him out. So there was really no drawback to me just going for the Spectral Thief here. I guarantee that I'm going to be able to 2-hit KO the Arceus, and there's nothing else that I can pop my Z move on besides his Arceus anyways. So he is going to be able to just barely hang on here from the Toxic, which is perfectly fine by me. Much like the Lugia scenario, he's not going to switch out here. He's going to sack it off because the Arceus is too low to the point where it can really help him out at all. And at this point, Argon actually does have a chance to win this battle. He still has his Marshadow in the back, and he still has his Landers, which if Landers is Adamant Scarf, it just wins. It literally just wins, because without me getting off that chip damage with Stealth Rocks, this Shadow Sneak will not put Landers in range of where Fake Out from my Lopunny will knock him out. So I'm going to go for the Shadow Sneak here, just get off as much damage as I can, and then I'm going to have to bring in my Arceus and just pray that he is not adamant and that he does not crit me. The max damage that his Earthquake can do if he's Jolly is 132 points of damage, and I'm 6 points out of that range, and I'm able to live on 9 HP, meaning he wasn't Adamant Scarf, and I'm gonna be able to knock out this Landers, and that is really good for me, because as I go down from the Toxic this turn, his last Pokemon is the Marshadow. What I can do is safely bring in my Lopunny, go for the Fake Out, and break his Focus Sash, because I know Argon is a huge fan of Focus Sash Marshadow, and then from there pivot out into my Magearna, which can live one close combat, take another close combat, and then knock him out with the Floral Cannon. At least that's what I was thinking was gonna happen. So I do go for the Fake Out, break the Sash, getting off a solid like 25% amount of damage on the Marshadow. In comes my Magearna, knowing I can take the close combat, but he actually pulls out the Drain Punch, which I was not expecting at all, to be honest with you guys, because the following turn, he's going to be able to go for one more Drain Punch and be brought back up to where his Focus Sash will be back intact. And I'm guessing I just forgot, but I didn't know at the time that if your Focus Sash is broken and then you're brought back up to full HP, it's like your Focus Sash wasn't broken at all, because as you see here, he's brought back up to full HP. Floral Cannon is going to be a straight Oko if he didn't have Focus Sash intact, and he hangs on to the Focus Sash. So yeah, like I said, I didn't know that at the moment, and I guess that I can just remember that for future games. But yeah, at this point, the match is basically over. Even if he knocks out my Magearna, I can then just bring in my Lopunny and Fake Out to revenge kill the Marshadow. So he's going to go for the Spectral Thief. I'm actually able to live, and I'm going to be able to go for the Volt Switch here for the very narrow 2-0 victory in my favor. So if you guys actually watched this entire battle, thank you so much. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, this match was absolutely intense, man. Like, this was such a back and forth match, and I honestly thought that near the end of the battle I was gonna lose because of that Landers and Marshadow combination. Thankfully though, I was able to survive with Arceus and pull out the victory. So again, good game to Argon, guys. Check him out. Hammer that like button down below if you did enjoy the video. I know there was a lot of toxicing going in this battle, but hey, I mean, if that's the strategy of a team, that's how sometimes you gotta win. So hopefully y'all did enjoy. If you did, you know what to do. With that being said, guys, I'll see you all tomorrow. So later, everybody.
Cause my brain and heart are both tied in a knot, and this hinders me from crying a lot. This causing me to show no emotion. But when I said I cared, I wasn't joking. But I guess it's too late for me to become broken. For now, I'm living with no more pain, tears of hoping. I'm just coasting. Yeah, I said I'm coasting. No more pain, tears, and hoping. For real.